Money Vikings, thanks for joining me. Today in this video, I would like to go over how to be the millionaire next door. And a bit of it is from personal experience and a lot of the interviews that we've done at Money Vikings at truewealth.moneyvikings.com. But another part of it is from the famous book, The Millionaire Next Door, which came out probably 25 plus years ago now, which is kind of surprising. First had a copy when I was maybe about 20 years old, and it definitely shaped my perception of what it takes to build wealth in the US. I wanted to revisit some of these ideas. It's now 2024, so I hope you're off to a good year in terms of doing all those micro habits, those small steps every day that we talk about that really build a life of true wealth. And more, I believe that that is the answer, that it's really about the small things that you can do every day to build wealth and to build your health and to build your relationships, because all of that's important. I did have a loss this year in our family early on, and so we're dealing with that, and I'll probably write about that at another time within the blog. But that said, I want to get into it today. It's essentially the top concepts that you need to embrace to be the next millionaire next door, or at least to follow the footsteps of millions of people in this country that did not receive an inheritance, didn't always necessarily have the most high prestige or high paying jobs. A lot of times these were very normal middle class people, quote unquote. They wore jeans and a shirt, and they weren't wearing expensive Rolexes or even driving a luxury car. They were probably a lot of times driving a Toyota or a Honda. And, you come to find out that that person had a net worth in the millions of dollars. And it just totally defies what now YouTube and what media, and especially what I'll call the Kardashian type media, tells us about wealth in this country. There are these very odd sort of freaks of nature, I guess you could say, where it's the 0.001 percenters. It's not even the 1%ers, where somehow their family or something they've done has created, this billions of dollars of wealth. But most people that are in the millionaire sort of brackets are pretty normal folks in a lot of ways. But they've done certain common things that have made them successful. And even if you don't reach millionaire status, I wanted to say that these habits can just help us, I believe, build a life and live a life of true wealth. So with that, let's get right into it. I was about 20 years old when I came across The Millionaire Next Door. I would go to Barnes & Noble, if anybody knows what those are anymore, and I would look at books on investing or whatever I was interested in, and came across this book. It was poignant to me because I grew up in the 80s, and we do a lot about Gen X investing. In the 80s, there was a show called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. So we didn't have the Kardashians at the time. I guess there was the dad Kardashian, who was some highfalutin Hollywood lawyer or something. I have no idea. But anyway, they had this show called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. So instead of seeing YouTubers running around in their mansions and talking about how wealthy they are, you would see these people featured and with their, again, their mansions and their Rolls Royces and all this stuff. So you would look at it and you think, oh yeah, well, if you're driving that luxury car and you have that mansion and you got gold toilets, then you're definitely wealthy. But this book, Millionaire Next Door, kind of turns this all upside down. It says, yes, there's those interesting 0.0001% situations, okay? And they're kind of fascinating to watch because you're kind of like, wow, how'd this all happen? But for the majority of very wealthy people or millionaires, it's a very different picture, but it's not one that makes for a really, exciting YouTube or for something that is just captivates us and makes us want to just binge on it. But that's what the show did. So the point being, most of us can build wealth. I mean, number one, you got to have consistent income, right? So that's a big part of it, but let me go into it. So number one is ignoring the myths of wealth. So this is including the confusion between income and net worth and the barriers for creating self-made wealth. So high income does not always mean net worth or a high number of assets. There's plenty of folks that have high incomes, but they have huge amounts of debt and they're going more and more into debt every year, and they spend every dollar and more of that income. But at the same time, I've known people that have never had fancy job titles or even really particularly huge salaries, but they still amassed large amounts of wealth through their habits, through frugality, and through consistent investing. Okay, that's number one. Number two, recognizing the influences other may have on financial attitudes and behaviors. This is an important one. You really have to take stock of those around you. And, Charlie Munger talks a lot about getting crazy out of your life, right? As soon as possible. Now, that's an extreme. You get like sort of maddening, resource sucking people out of your life is important, and emotionally draining people out of your life. But there's also sort of understanding your money story, your money attitudes, and then those around you and how it's all working together. This is why frank conversations about priorities, budgeting tools come in handy, really having a good sense of where your money's going every month, and are you getting ahead incrementally or are you falling behind? And you've got to know how you're trending is the biggest thing, I think. If you know how you're trending, then that's going to go a long way. So definitely know how you're trending. If you're trending into more and more debt, nothing's going to stop that until you stop it and until you really look in the mirror and get control of it. And I've been in those moments before where I've had to take a hard, long look and say, okay, I got myself into a hole here and it's time to reverse course, and you got to take action to do it. Okay. Number three. So another thing that millionaires do is they make consistently good consumer decisions. So this starts with the neighborhood they live in, understanding its potential effect on reaching financial goals. Sometimes trying to live in a really upscale neighborhood just creates more and more of catching up with the Joneses type thing, where you see more and more sort of fancy stuff. Got to live in a safe neighborhood. I totally believe in that. You want to be in a place with good schools. You want to be in a place where if you bought your home, that the asset value is going to go up generally over time. But at the same time, it may not be worth it sometimes to stretch into that like ultra quote unquote wealthy neighborhood, because that might actually throw a person off and create more consumer behavior. Okay. Number four, taking stock of your strengths and weaknesses. We really need to know what it is that we are good at and the things that get us into holes. Okay. So we talk about it all the time in Money Vikings and on the blog, truewealth.moneyvikings.com. Number one, automating. Automating is so huge. You've got to automate those bi-weekly investments, those monthly investments. You've got to get the human out of it. And I was talking with a friend of mine the other day. The other thing you want to do is create friction points to access that money. Once you set that up and you automate it and you have it going, you want there to be friction points where it's actually not that easy to access it. So it's just one idea in terms of mitigating your weaknesses is what it's about. And most people have that weakness. So the other thing about weaknesses is know where your shopping weaknesses are. There was a while where I was overdoing it on the collectible cards, right? And collectible stuff. So I pulled back on a lot of that because got to be careful with it. Okay. This is the next thing. Recognizing successful investing behaviors can be learned and improved, and that the fruits of effectively investing what is saved over time provide security for the more important aspects of life. So what this means is having a grounding and a real sense of investing success protocols, right? So number one is understanding asset allocation, understanding risk management, understanding diversification in a strategic manner, understanding rebalancing of your portfolio. All those things I believe really should be taught in high school. But if you didn't learn them in high school, which most of us don't, then learn them as an adult and learn them as quickly as possible. I think it will help you weather the ups and downs of the market. And I think you'll be a much better long-term investor understanding those concepts. And especially understanding yourself, knowing your risk tolerance. Some people have much more of a stomach for risk, but if you're the type of person that if the market drops 30% and you sell everything the next day, that means your stomach for risk isn't that good. So you need less risk. But if the stock market drops 30% and you realize that your investment capital is a long-term passive income machine and that you're not going to access that money for 10, 20, 30 years, doesn't matter, and that's a little higher risk tolerance. Okay. So these are the ways that we're applying these lessons from Millionaire Next Door to our lives. Number one, I'm always aware of the illusion of wealth around us. Particularly in American society, there's a lot of illusions of wealth. So a fancy car is not necessarily a sign of someone being wealthy. It means that typically it means they're paying a very high monthly cost for a car. Number two, frugality. It can't be forgotten. Frugality is the cornerstone of wealth building. And I would just say stop caring about keeping up with the Joneses. Think about your specific life and your specific priorities where you're at this time. If you have children, those are your priorities, right? A lot of times. If you're someone that values experiences over things, then that gives you a sense of your priorities. If home ownership is just very important to you for a sense of security, then that's going to be your priority. If you don't really care about trips or owning a home and you don't mind renting and you're still building wealth, but maybe you really like fine dining, well, that's your priority, with your extra, fun money, not with your money that you're using to live off of or investing with. Okay. The third concept I want to throw out there is lifelong learning. That's what Money Vikings is all about. We are basically lifelong learners, and we're trying to share all that knowledge with all of you. And speaking of that, do appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe as we grow the channel. Number 4, your house. So the biggest spending decision that most of us make is typically our home. I would just say, think carefully about this. I'm overall, or generally speaking, a fan of home ownership, especially if you have a family. But I understand it's not for everybody, and it's not always the answer. So just think about it for your own specific situation and do your research. Number 5, habits and discipline. Our habits and our discipline, I think, continually have to be refined. And again, I'm a big fan. I don't do New Year's resolutions anymore, but I do like the concept of having intentions out there to exercise more, to eat healthier, to invest and save more, to do this or that. Have those intentions. And each day I try to ask myself, what's one small thing I can do for each one of those intentions? Some days, it's just getting on an exercise bike for 10 minutes because that's the only time I have, or going on a walk around the block, or doing 20 push-ups. But you know what? I'm a big believer that that's better than nothing, and it adds up over time, and it actually leads to better results. Number 6, I want to mention studying. So again, millionaires do spend a lot of time studying investing, and they're continually looking for investment opportunities. So if this is a goal of yours, it's probably a good idea to take that up. And the last thing I want to mention before we log off here is that, don't get too caught up about other people's paths. Try to focus on your path, because we all have different our paths in life rhyme. I mean, there's a season for everything. There's childhood, there's middle age, there's early adulthood, there's, late stages, etc. There's retirement. So there's some general themes, but how we all progress through those stages is actually quite unique to each of us. And it's unique to our time. It's unique to our location. So it doesn't do a lot of good to compare ourselves to other people. It just makes more sense to embrace the path you have and make the most of that path. And if you're not happy with the path, find a way to get on a new path, or find a way to open up new opportunities, really, and new avenues. So with all that, I hope that helps you. I hope that helps you give a recap of some of the concepts of a typical millionaire in the United States. And I do believe that for me, embracing those concepts has led to a lot of success. So not financial advice, but this is the way I see it, and I like sharing it with all of you. So thanks again for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. And see you on the next one. Take care.